Please leave a comment where you are watching from. They say never whistle at night in the woods. I didn't believe that until something started whistling back, in my tune, my tone, and my voice. I was never one to scare easy. Growing up on a working farm in rural Missouri teaches you a few things. Animals don't wait. Weather doesn't care. And when something breaks, you fix it. Fast. That kind of life doesn't leave much room for being afraid of shadows. You learn to laugh off the rustle in the cornfield, brush off the hoot of an owl, and ignore the way your reflection moves just a little too slowly in the old farmhouse window. But there's one thing I won't laugh off anymore, and that is whistling. At night, especially in the woods. That started in the fall of my senior year. It was early November, sunset came quick and cold came quicker. I was balancing school, baseball practice, and working the family farm. My granddad owned 2 pieces of property, the main house and the southern field where he kept a dozen cows. I was the only one in the family who still helped him regularly, and he trusted me enough to do chores solo. The day it began, I remember being exhausted. Practice had run late, and by the time I got out to the pasture, the sun was practically gone. The sky was this dull bruised color, the kind you see before a snow hits. I parked my truck at the edge of the field and climbed out, the breath in my lungs already visible. I went about my chores, same as always, grabbed the buckets, filled them with feed, and started the trek to the troughs. Normally, I'd unlock the second gate and drive through, but I'd forgotten the key that day, which meant I had to walk. 40 yards each trip, 2 buckets at a time. Not fun. To keep my spirits up, I started whistling. Not a tune or anything, just something light and random. It was something I did often, almost without thinking. Kept the silence away. And that silence is deep out there, the kind that rings in your ears. I finished up and tossed the last buckets into the bed of the truck when I heard it. A whistle. It came from across the road, from the property opposite our southern pasture. An overgrown lot with a crumbling fence and trees packed so tightly together they looked like one solid wall of blackness. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Maybe it was the wind. But then I heard it again. A low, repeating whistle, mimicking the one I'd just been doing. My stomach tightened. No one lived out there. Hasn't for years. That place was abandoned when I was in diapers. I stared into the tree line, half expecting a neighbor or hunter to step out and wave. Nothing. I laughed nervously, shook my head, and muttered, real funny. No reply. I left quickly that night. It happened again 3 days later. This time I didn't whistle. I was too tired and honestly a little shaken. But as I walked back toward the truck, that same whistle echoed from across the road. Louder. Closer. That's when I started to worry. I stopped whistling completely after that. But it didn't matter. Whatever it was kept doing it. A little louder every day. A little clearer. And then it changed. It started whistling first, as if it was asking me to join in. At first I thought maybe it was some neighborhood prank. Maybe someone saw me working the fields and decided to mess with me. But we didn't really have neighbors that close. The next house over was a full mile away, and the land between was wild, overgrown, and fenced off for cattle. About a week later, I brought the gate key. I unlocked it and dropped them in the grass. Damn it, I muttered. That's when I heard it. Not a whistle. A voice. Damn thiet. Drawn out. Raspy. Like someone coughing the words through dust and smoke. I stood up slowly, heart pounding. Hello? Nothing. Damn. It. Damn. Damn it. My voice. My exact tone. Same angry inflection. Like a parrot who'd been listening for days. That's when I did something unbelievably stupid. I went looking. The fence across the road was half fallen. I slipped through, stepping into unfamiliar woods. The trees swallowed light. The deeper I walked, the more wrong it felt, like the woods were leaning and listening. The ground sloped up into a hill, thick with roots and brambles. I caught glimpses of old stone foundations, maybe ruins from a farmhouse long gone. The smell hit me halfway up. Rot, wet fur, copper and mold. I gagged, tried to back out. But then I heard it. My name. It whispered it, soft, gurgling. Tyler. I froze. Took a shaky step forward, then I crested the hill and saw it. Crouched in the middle of the clearing. Pale. Thin. Unclothed. Its arms were too long, its legs bent at impossible angles. It wasn't facing me, just rocking, slowly, like a child humming to itself. Then it stopped, tilted its head, snapped its neck around to face me. Not turn snap. Its eyes were wrong. Too big. Too black. Then it smiled. It was my smile. Damn it, it said. My voice. Perfect. Then it stood up. Too tall. 8, maybe 9 feet. Bones cracked as it unfolded. I couldn't move. My feet were stuck. It took a step. That broke the spell. I turned and ran. Full sprint. Down the hill. Branches tore my skin. Roots tried to trip me. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. But I heard it, mimicking the sound of my footsteps. Not running, mimicking. Like it was copying how a person should run. Clicks. Cracks. Grunts. I hit the fence, vaulted it, dove into my truck. I peeled out of there and didn't stop driving until I saw lights. I didn't sleep that night. Not the night after either. My dreams were filled with distorted reflections, me but wrong. Smiling when I wasn't. Moving when I stayed still. The next day, I went back during daylight. Everything was quiet. No tracks. No smell. No creature. I never told my grandfather. Never told anyone. Who would believe me? But I still had to work the farm. I started carrying a shotgun. Left before sundown. Never whistled again. But sometimes, it still whistles. Outside the barn. Outside my window. The same tune. A lullaby my mom used to sing. She died when I was 7. I never whistled that tune. Not once. Now I hear it every night. They say the woods hide things. Lost hikers, old spirits, whispers on the wind. My father said it was a skinwalker. I called it nonsense, until I saw what tore my grandfather to pieces. When you're a kid, you don't question the stories your parents tell. You hear something creepy, you get scared, you eventually forget. But there are some stories that grow with you. Stories that harden and rot at the edges until they feel like memories instead of bedtime warnings. The one my father told me about the night my grandfather died, that one never left me. We lived on a dairy farm in southern Ohio. Real middle of nowhere kind of place, where the roads were dirt, the neighbors were cows, and the nights were too dark and too quiet. Every now and then, a calf would turn up torn apart in the pasture. Local coyotes were the usual suspects. Feral dogs maybe. But one November night, my dad and grandfather went out hunting, and only one of them came back. Dad didn't talk about it until I turned 17. Then, he sat me down with a bottle of rye and a face full of ghosts. He said they were hunting coyotes. $50 a pelt. It wasn't legal, but times were hard, and pelts meant meat on the table. They had a routine. Start at the edge of the woods, circle the property, bait the traps. That night felt different, though. The air was heavy. Birds were silent. And the deeper they went, the more wrong it felt. They found the carcasses first. Not just one or two, but a pile. Deer, raccoons, rabbits, ripped to shreds. Not eaten. Torn apart like someone had been playing with them. That's not how animals hunt. Predators kill clean. Quick. What they found was carnage. And the blood, it was everywhere. Smeared on bark. Soaked into the soil. Flies were thick as fog. My dad said my grandfather wanted to track it. Thought maybe it was a pack of feral dogs. But even then, something about it didn't sit right. No footprints. No drag marks. Just blood and silence. Still, they pressed on. Followed the trail to an old field. Used to be soy, but now it was just dust and stubble. That's when they heard it. Not footsteps. Not growling. A sound like paper tearing and water sloshing. High-pitched and guttural at the same time. Then they saw it. At the edge of the abandoned schoolhouse that sat on the hill, something crouched over a carcass. Pale. Hairless. It had limbs like a man but moved like a beast. My dad said it was ripping flesh with long fingers, tossing aside bones like trash. He cleared his throat. Wanted to warn it or scare it off. The thing froze. Then it turned its head. Not its body, just the head. A full 180 degrees. And it screamed. My grandfather raised his shotgun. My dad fired first. But the thing was on them in seconds. It moved like wind, like liquid muscle, tearing into them with claws and teeth. My dad said he emptied the clip. Hit it point blank with 5 rounds. But it didn't bleed. It tore into my grandfather. Tore out his throat. His eyes. His jaw. My dad beat it with the butt of his rifle. It didn't flinch. It didn't even seem to notice. Then something changed. Maybe it got bored. Maybe it got tired. It backed off just enough for my dad to pull my grandfather's knife and stab it in the shoulder. That gave him time to grab what was left of his father and run. He said it followed him, screaming, slamming through trees like a tornado. He didn't stop until he reached the landlord's house, a mile away. He had my grandfather's body slung over his back. When the landlord saw him, he didn't ask questions. Just grabbed him and dragged him inside. Locked the doors. Readied the guns. They never found the thing. The cops came. Made a report. Blamed it on a bear. But my dad said no bear moves like that. No bear sounds like that. And no bear mimics a man's dying scream. They called it a skinwalker. I called it nonsense. Until the night I saw it myself. It was late October, my junior year of college. I came back to the farm during fall break, something I hadn't done in 2 years. My dad had changed a lot since I'd left. He wasn't as strong, not physically, but he looked harder, like the land had started to eat him too. He rarely went into the woods anymore. Always kept the porch light on. Always had a rifle within reach. That week, the calves started dying again. Same signs, ripped open throats, flesh torn, organs untouched. Blood sprayed in perfect arcs across trees. And no tracks. I was the one who suggested we go looking. Dad didn't want to. He looked at me like I was crazy. Said I didn't know what I was asking for. But I pressed. Said I didn't believe in fairy tales. I wasn't 13 anymore. So we went. We left just before sundown. Dad brought the old shotgun. I took a hunting rifle. We didn't talk much as we crossed the pasture. The woods ahead looked like black water, swallowing all light. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. No crickets. No owls. No breeze. We found the kill site an hour in. A doe this time. Ripped apart like the others. Bones snapped. Blood soaking into the dirt. Her eyes still open. Then we heard it. A whistle. Not a bird. Not wind. It was mimicking. My dad's whistle. One he used to call dogs when I was a kid. He froze. "Run," he said. Then we heard it moving. Twigs snapping. Trees groaning. And breathing, rasping like something had too many lungs and not enough air. Then we saw it. It stepped out of the tree line. Not fast. Not slow. It looked like a man once. Maybe. But its limbs were too long. Its skin too tight. Like it had borrowed someone else's body and didn't know how to wear it. Its mouth opened. And it spoke. "Dad, help me." It was my voice. I raised my rifle. My father lowered it. "Don't," he whispered. "That's what it wants." I didn't understand. Not until it smiled. It stepped forward. Again. And the woods exploded with sound. My father fired. Once. Twice. I joined in. The thing shrieked, not in pain, but in joy. Like it was playing a game. It darted forward, then back. Toying with us. We ran. Didn't stop until we hit the edge of the farm. It didn't follow, but it watched. That night, my father boarded up the windows. Left a lamp on in every room. And I believed him. Because I saw it. My father died in the woods. When I saw what killed him, I stopped believing in predators and started believing in monsters. We never talked much about fear in my family. My father was a hard man, not cruel, but sharp, like a blade forged in fire and frozen in blood. He was the kind of man who saw things in black and white, who believed in bullets over words, and who thought the only thing to fear in the woods was the weather. But one night, the woods proved him wrong. It started in the fall of '94. I was 13 and already taller than most kids my age, but I was scrawny. I had a rifle too small for my hands and a heart too big for my body. We lived in rural Ohio, miles away from the next house, near the woods that stretched endlessly eastward, a patchwork of oak and ash, deep creeks and lost trails. The kind of woods you could wander into and never come out of if you weren't careful. We made money hunting coyotes back then, $50 a skin, and we needed every dollar. The dairy farm barely kept us fed, and with the cows dying off from disease, my father turned to the hunt. I came with him because I wanted to be like him, because I didn't know what else to do. That night, we were already deep into the woods, dragging the corpses of 2 coyotes back to the truck, and we saw the blood. It painted the ground like a slaughterhouse, splashed across trees, soaked into the soil. At first, we thought it was another coyote kill, maybe a deer taken down. But then we saw the pieces. Not 1, not 2, 3 deer, all torn apart, chunks of them thrown 20 feet from the rest. Their insides strewn around like confetti, heads twisted the wrong way, limbs bent backwards. Nothing ate the meat. Nothing fed. It wasn't a kill. It was a message. My father crouched low beside one of the torsos. He touched the ribcage, then stood. "Whatever did this," he said, voice low, "ain't looking for food." I should have been scared then, but I wasn't. I felt invincible next to him. We had our guns. We had each other. We were the hunters. So we followed the blood. We didn't talk, just moved. The trail was easy to follow. Thick streaks of gore through the underbrush, a deer's head dangling from a low branch, its antlers snapped off. Birds screamed overhead. Rabbits darted past us. Then coyotes. A whole pack running the other way, their eyes wide, tails tucked. They didn't look at us. They didn't care. They just ran. That's when I knew something was wrong. Coyotes don't run toward people. They fear us. Something behind them, something in those woods, was worse than us. The trail led us to an old valley, flat and wide. Once it had been a soybean field, but now it was just dirt, dry and cracked, pale in the moonlight. At the far edge stood the schoolhouse. It was ancient, half its roof caved in, brick walls slumped and broken. We'd passed it before during hunts, seen its broken windows, its graffiti-covered doors. Kids used to party there. Some still did. But that night, it looked like something else. Something waiting. We heard it before we saw it. A screech. Not a scream, not an animal cry, something guttural layered. Like something crying and laughing at once. My father raised his shotgun and nodded at me. Stay close. We crept closer. 20 yards. 10. Then we saw it. It was crouched over something, what looked like another deer, but it wasn't feeding. It was tearing pieces off and throwing them behind it, like it didn't care, like it was angry. Its skin was pale, almost translucent. Its spine arched unnaturally, like it had too many joints. Its arms were long, ending in fingers that scraped the ground, and each hand was tipped with claws as long as knives. My father froze. Jesus, he whispered. It hurt him. The creature's head snapped up. Its eyes were black, too wide for its skull, and its jaw hung too low, showing teeth, rows and rows of them, jagged and long. It shrieked again and launched itself at us. The shotgun boomed. I think he missed. Or maybe it didn't matter. The thing hit him like a truck, claws tearing into his chest. I screamed and raised my .22, firing blindly. Pop, pop, pop. It barely flinched. My dad was screaming, but it wasn't pain, it was fury. He stabbed at it with his hunting knife, over and over, blood flying in arcs. And then he stopped screaming. It tore his throat open. I don't remember running. I don't remember grabbing him or dragging him. All I know is I looked down at my arms and he was there limp, his eyes wide and empty, his jaw torn away. I ran. Behind me, the woods erupted. Trees snapped, branches cracked, birds screamed. The thing chased me, howling, clawing. Its footsteps thundered behind me like a landslide. I broke into the clearing near our landlord's house, just as the porch lights came on. He was out there with his friends, drinking. They saw me. They saw what was on my back. And then they saw it. They dragged me inside, barricaded the doors, grabbed rifles. I remember someone yelling to call the cops, another to get the dogs. I lay on the floor, cradling my father's body. The thing circled the house. We saw it move in front of the fire outside, tall, thin, jerking like a puppet with cut strings. It shrieked again, and something came flying through the window. A dog. A Labrador. Its head gone. We pushed furniture against the doors. It tore through the garage. Then the attic. Then it went silent. That silence was worse than anything. It wasn't gone. It was waiting. Then we heard it upstairs. A man screamed. Then gunshots. Then silence. Someone handed me a pistol. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. We gathered at the base of the stairs. The top half of the door blew apart, shotguns. The thing screamed, a horrible, ripping noise. One of the men hit it in the arm. The hand came clean off, but it didn't bleed. It retreated, but not far. It stayed outside until dawn. The police showed up an hour later. The official report said bear. Maybe rabid. Maybe a freak. Something explainable. But we knew. The hand was missing. One of the cops had taken it as evidence, but he died in a car crash on the way to the station. The hand vanished. The body of my father was cremated without autopsy. I asked the landlord what really happened, but he just drank and said, "Some things ain't meant to be found." He disappeared a year later. Never found. I joined the army. Got shipped out. Did my tours. Killed real monsters overseas. But I never forgot. When my mother died, my father had nothing left. He went back into those woods. Maybe for revenge. Maybe to die. They never found him. But I did. 10 years later. I went back with a team. Veterans. Friends. People who owed me. We packed heavy. ARs. Shotguns. Night vision. Everything. And we found the schoolhouse. Still standing. Still reeking of blood and rot. The bones were still there. Fresh ones. Human. Animal. Arranged like shrines. And we found it. It hadn't aged. Hadn't changed. It remembered me. Screamed my name. We opened fire. 50 rounds. Then 70. It still came. But it bled this time. It screamed like it was dying. Like we'd taken something from it. We burned the schoolhouse to the ground. It was the summer of 2013, and I had just picked up an odd side hustle, hunting coyotes for their pelts. I wasn't desperate for cash, not exactly, but there was something deeply satisfying about being alone in the woods with nothing but my rifle and the wind. There was a guy who paid good money for good fur, and it was early season, which meant their coats were still full and thick. I wasn't new to the woods. I'd grown up surrounded by them, but that summer something changed. The mountains stopped feeling like home and started feeling like they were watching me. I took my bare-bones AR-15, no bells or whistles. I didn't need fancy optics, just something reliable that would drop a predator or, worst case, something bigger. I'd mounted a simple sling the way AKs do messenger style, so I could ride with it ready. That evening, I rode my ATV up to an old hunting cabin I used for overnight trips. Remote, abandoned, hidden in the thickest stretch of woods I'd ever walked through. Perfect for predators, and perfect for someone like me who didn't want to be found. I'd been baiting the area behind the cabin for a few weeks, tossing out rabbit guts and squirrel remains in a clearing. The plan was to attract a pack, then return later to pick them off from the tree line. Simple. That evening, I went to check the bait. Everything was gone. Not scattered. Not picked at. Gone. No bones, no fur, not even flies. It was like someone had swept it all up with a vacuum. Not a trace of blood or struggle. Something about it made my stomach feel hollow. Still, I pushed the thought away. Maybe a bear. Maybe something smarter. I walked back, cracked open a warm beer, sat on the porch with my rifle across my lap, and listened to the wind pick up. Then the coyotes started howling. At first, it was distant, just a chorus of sharp yelps and calls. Standard fare. Then it got weird. The howls changed pitch. They warped. They started sounding like words. Help me. It came from the woods to the south. Not a scream, not a yell, just a broken whisper, like someone with sand in their throat. Help me. I stood up slowly, my body already tensed before I realized it. The rifle was up in my hands without thinking. I scanned the tree line. Nothing. I figured maybe it was the old man who lived a couple miles down the mountain. He had a trailer tucked in the woods, probably slipped or got lost. That made sense, right? I grabbed my AR, slung it tight, and fired up the ATV, headed straight down the trail toward the source of the sound. The trail dipped into a tight U-shaped valley, where the trees leaned in and swallowed the light. I killed the throttle to coast down quietly, not wanting to spook whatever I was heading toward. That's when I heard it again. Clear. Sharp. Right in front of me. Help me. I yanked the handlebars to turn fast. Too fast. The ATV tipped sideways, slammed into a rock, and rolled. Everything went black. I came to under the ATV, pinned at the knee. My face hurt. My arms were scratched up and sticky with blood. My rifle was somewhere beside me, tangled in the sling and half buried under my torso. I couldn't move, could barely breathe. My first thought was wait. I don't know why. I just knew I wasn't alone. And then I heard it. Shuffling. Not footsteps. Not paws. Dragging. Something was moving just beyond the edge of the trail. Slow. Deliberate. The sound of leaves shifting under weight. Help me. But now it was behind me. I twisted to look but couldn't see past the overturned ATV. My arms were shaking as I groped for my rifle. Something stepped closer, and then I saw it. It leaned over the ATV like a bartender peeking at a passed-out drunk. It was tall, taller than anyone had a right to be. It had the general shape of a man, 2 arms, 2 legs, but everything else was wrong. Its face was sunken, the skin stretched thin and waxy, like melted plastic over a skull. Its eyes were black holes with no shine, and its mouth, it moved, but the words didn't come from it. Help me, it croaked again. Only this time it was in my voice. I stopped breathing. It reached a hand down toward me. Fingers like twigs, knuckles bending too far. I felt its cold, claw-like fingers touch my cheek. I screamed and yanked the trigger. The rifle cracked like a whip, lighting up the woods for a split second. The thing didn't flinch. It grabbed my hair and began slamming my skull into the dirt, over and over, with strength that felt inhuman. I saw stars. My vision doubled, then tripled. I kept pulling the trigger. I don't even remember aiming, just firing, over and over, praying one round would matter. Then the rifle stopped. Empty. It grabbed the barrel and ripped the gun from my hands. Bent it like it was made of wire and slammed the stock into my ribs. The scream that came out of it wasn't human. Then I heard a new sound. A deeper gunshot. The creature's head snapped to the side. It stumbled back. Another shot. Louder. Close. And then a voice yelling, "I got you. Hold on." Someone pulled me up by the arm. The pain hit like lightning. I screamed. It was the old man, the one who lived down the mountain. He had a revolver the size of a pipe wrench and was firing off round after round at the thing, screaming like he was back in a war. That's the last thing I remember before everything went black again. I woke up in a hospital 2 days later. Dozens of stitches, concussion, cracked ribs, a fractured cheekbone, my left leg bruised but not broken. The doctors told me I'd flipped the ATV and probably imagined the rest during a concussion-induced hallucination. I asked about the claw marks. They said I fell into a bush. I didn't argue. I just nodded. But the next week, I went to see the old man. He didn't say a word at first, just poured me a glass of bourbon and lit a cigarette. "What the hell was that thing?" I asked. He didn't meet my eyes. "A bear," he said flatly. But his hands were shaking. He didn't believe that, and neither did I. I went back to the cabin a month later. The trail was overgrown. My ATV was gone, probably towed out. But the bait station? Still empty. But this time there were prints. Barefoot. Human but too long. Toes curled. And deep gouges like claws dragging behind them. In the center of the bait station, scratched into the dirt in perfect, symmetrical letters. "Help me." You don't forget the first time something looks at you and knows what you are. Not who you are, what? It happened in northern Arizona, just past the edge of the reservation, near a dead patch of forest where the trees lean like drunk skeletons. The locals call it No Shadow Hollow, which always seemed like some made-up horror story until I saw it for myself. I'm not a superstitious guy. At least I wasn't. I don't believe in Bigfoot, ghosts, any of that crap. I'm just a wildlife biologist who took a contract I shouldn't have. They told me it was a simple job, tracking wolf movements after reports of cattle being mauled in ways that didn't match normal predator behavior. Coyotes maybe, wolves maybe, but the ranchers swore up and down this wasn't just some rogue animal. Something meaner, smarter. That kind of thing usually means they've been hitting the bottle too hard or watched too many late-night horror shows. So I took the job. I was 3 days into my field work, camping alone, when I started noticing things weren't adding up. Tracks appeared overnight, barefoot human tracks, in the snow. Not even prints from boots or shoes, just toes. Spread unnaturally wide, heel marks barely pressing into the ice like something gliding. I followed them once, just for a few hundred feet, but they didn't lead anywhere. They just stopped, like the thing vanished into thin air. That first night, I wrote it off. Maybe someone was screwing around. Pranks. Locals messing with the outsider. Classic hazing. I zipped up my tent, put in my earbuds, and listened to some old blues tracks until I passed out. The next night I heard it. Not the usual sounds of the forest, mind you. No owls or coyotes or the distant call of elk. This was something different. Something pretending to be those things. A mangled, broken coyote cry echoed just past my camp. The sound started normal, then dragged on a half-second too long. Like a bad recording. Like a coyote with a throat full of gravel. Then it stopped. Silence. Not a breeze. Not a cricket. Just pure dead air. That kind of silence, that's wrong. You don't realize how much background noise the world has until it's gone. That's when I saw it, just beyond the firelight. A silhouette, no bigger than a man, standing still at the edge of the trees. I only saw it because the fire popped and cast a sudden flicker of light. Just a shape, one you feel looking back at you, like it's measuring your bones from the inside out. I didn't sleep that night. The next day I hiked out to check a trail cam I had strapped to a birch tree. The device was cracked, torn clean off the tree like someone had grabbed it and ripped. The plastic was punctured, but not by teeth, by fingers. Long, narrow fingers. The footage was trashed. But the camera had one image left on its corrupted memory card. It was me, sleeping in my tent. Time-stamped around 2:47 a.m. I didn't take it. That was the first time I thought about leaving. I packed everything up, shoved it all into my backpack, and started hiking the 6 miles back to my truck. I didn't care about the contract anymore. Screw the paycheck. But something strange happened when I got halfway out. I looped back to the same spot I'd started from. At first, I thought I had taken a wrong turn. Maybe I was tired, my mind playing tricks. But then I noticed something chilling. My boot prints. They were all around the clearing. Crisscrossing, looping, dancing. No human walks like that. I stopped, heart pounding, and then I heard it. My voice. Coming from the trees behind me. Help, help me. It called, quiet at first. Then more urgent, more garbled. Help, MMM. It sounded like someone choking on the word. Mimicking it. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the tree line and the dark. I ran. I don't remember how long. My legs felt like lead, lungs burning, eyes watering. But I ran until I collapsed in a ditch, completely out of breath, clutching a hunting knife I'd never even taken out of the sheath before. My hands were shaking. I was crying, I think. Maybe praying. And then it crouched across from me. I didn't hear it approach. It was just there, squatting in the dark like a grotesque gargoyle. Pale skin pulled tight over a too-thin frame. Eyes like dead coals. And worst of all, it was wearing my face. But wrong. Off. Like someone who had seen me, but didn't quite understand what a face was supposed to be. The smile was too wide. The skin was too smooth. Its nose looked like it had been drawn from memory, blurry, unfinished. My own voice slithered from its throat. You lost? It hissed. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My throat locked up like it knew it would only make things worse. It tilted its head at me like a confused dog, then slowly stood upright, every joint popping too loud, too slow. I blinked, and it was gone. Just gone. Not a sound. Not a footprint. Nothing. I crawled out of that forest before morning. Left my tent, my gear, hell, even my wallet. I didn't care. I made it back to my truck, just as the sun started to rise. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I didn't stop driving for 4 hours. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. The nightmares started 3 nights later. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, gasping, sometimes with fresh dirt under my nails. I started hearing voices outside my apartment window, even though I lived on the 3rd floor. My own voice, repeating back things I'd said earlier that day, laughing when I didn't, calling my name in the voice of my mother, even though she'd been dead 5 years. I tried to convince myself it was stress, trauma. The brain is good at messing with you. So I started therapy. The shrink didn't believe me, obviously. He thought I was dissociating, maybe PTSD. Gave me pills. They didn't help. I stopped going to work. I stopped answering calls. People started asking questions. And then the neighbor's cat disappeared. A few days later, they found its body in the alley behind our building. Or most of it. It had been opened, hollowed out, like someone had been wearing it. I moved back in with my dad in New Mexico after that, out in the desert, far from any forests. But even then it followed. I saw it once, in the reflection of a gas station window. My face looking back, but grinning. I wasn't. That's when I started researching. Old tribal legends. Navajo lore. I spoke with an old man near Gallup who didn't like talking about it. Told me I was marked now. That I'd seen it. That once you see one, really see it, it doesn't forget you. He called it Untitled Chapter, the Skinwalker. Said they were once men. Twisted things. Sorcerers who traded their souls for power. They were the skin of animals, but sometimes they try on people. He told me not to say the word out loud. Said names had power. I asked him how to get rid of it. He just looked at me and said, "You don't." I haven't slept in 3 days. Every time I close my eyes, I see it crouching at the edge of my bed, smiling that too wide smile. Sometimes it sings to me, my mother's lullabies. Other times it just sits, staring, waiting. Last night, I found muddy footprints in the hallway. Barefoot. Human-shaped, but with claws where the toes should be. My father swears he didn't hear anything, but I heard it whispering in the vents. Let me in. It's not trying to hurt me. Not yet. It's wearing me down, waiting for me to break. That's what it does. It watches, learns, wears you, and when you're hollow enough, when there's nothing left but an echo, it takes your skin. I moved into my uncle's cabin after he died. Inherited it, technically. Middle of nowhere. Western Montana. Closest neighbor is about 3 miles off, and the only way in is a dirt road that washes out when it rains. But it was free land, and after the year I'd had, divorce, layoffs, hospital bills, I needed an escape. I didn't even go to the funeral. We weren't close. Uncle Ray was the weird relative nobody talked about much. He used to trap animals for fur, lived off the grid, didn't trust phones or running water. My dad said he went crazy after his wife died. Kept saying things lived under the house, that they followed him in the walls. I should have known better. Should have just sold it, sight unseen. But when you're broke and have nowhere to go, even cursed cabins look cozy. The place looked fine when I got there. Quiet. Empty. Smelled like dust and pine and something faintly sour. Maybe rot. It was hard to tell. There was no electricity, but I'd brought lanterns and a battery pack for my phone. The inside had this rustic charm, stone fireplace with stove, an old rocking chair in the corner. Windows looked out into thick forest. The floor creaked like a haunted house, but that was expected. Old wood. I moved in with 2 duffel bags and a sleeping bag. The plan was simple. Clean the place up, get it appraised, flip it. That was the plan, until I heard the scratching. The first night, it started around 1:30 a.m. Faint at first, like mice in the walls, but deeper, slower. Not the frantic scurry of rodents, more like claws dragging against wood. Long, slow scrapes from underneath the floorboards. It was coming from beneath the living room. I sat there, flashlight in hand, not breathing, just listening. It would scratch for a few seconds, then stop. Then tap, tap, tap. 3 knocks, like something rapping from below. I checked the crawl space the next morning, lifted up the hatch in the pantry, and slid down with a light. Cobwebs, damp dirt, nothing living. No raccoons, no mice. But there were carvings in the wooden beams under the living room. Symbols I didn't recognize. Circular, sharp, burned into the wood like brands. And in the center of it all was something I'll never forget. A small pile of teeth. Human teeth. Clean, white, laid out in a perfect spiral. I went back upstairs, locked the hatch, and told myself someone was screwing around. Maybe Uncle Ray left them. Maybe he was crazy. Old survivalist, paranoid, losing his mind out here. That made sense. That was safe. But that night, it knocked again. 3 times. And I swear to God I heard something whisper my name. I started sleeping in the truck after that. I kept the engine running, headlights pointed at the cabin. But nothing ever moved outside. Nothing ever moved. The woods were too still. No birds. No wind. Just trees. Watching. I tried calling people. My cousin, my friend Darren, even my ex-wife. No one picked up. I left voicemails I don't even remember recording. One of them was just static and me breathing. I don't remember sending that one. The 3rd night, I saw light under the floorboards. Not firelight. Not electrical. A greenish glow, faint, pulsing like algae underwater. And I heard footsteps. From inside the walls. I tried leaving. Packed everything, started the truck, and the engine died. Nothing. Battery was new. Gas tank full. No reason for it. I slammed my fists against the wheel, screaming into the windshield, and then I heard a voice. From the back seat. It sounded like Uncle Ray. But he's dead. Let it in, it said, soft and dry like crumbling leaves. It just wants to wear you a while. I ran. Into the woods. Didn't care where. I just ran. The trees stretched too tall. Too thin. Like fingers. The forest felt tilted, like I was walking in a painting. I heard movement all around me. Twigs breaking, whispers in a language I couldn't place. Shapes darting just out of the corners of my vision. Eventually, I passed out under a tree. When I woke up, it was morning, and I was back at the cabin. No idea how I got there, but something was different. There were scratches on the front door, on the inside, and the pantry hatch was wide open. On the wall above the fireplace, written in something thick and dark, "You're already below." I don't know how long I stood there, just staring at the words. That's when the floorboards started bulging, like something was pushing up from underneath, like something alive. I ran again, this time into the attic, boarded it from the inside, nailed it shut. I've been up here 2 days now. I don't sleep. I barely blink. The whispers don't stop. They keep saying my name, and sometimes they laugh. Not like a person, like a child trying to imitate a laugh. Like it doesn't quite understand the sound. The worst part, I checked my phone earlier, opened the photo gallery. I don't remember taking anything, but there's a new folder called Below. Inside are dozens of pictures, all of me, sleeping, but taken from under the floor. They told me not to count the stairs. When I took the job tending the lighthouse at Blackmere Point, that was the only real warning the old keeper gave me. Not about storms or power outages, not even the isolation. Just that. Don't count the stairs, he muttered, eyes cloudy, skin cracked like driftwood. No matter what you do, don't count. I laughed. Thought he was being cryptic for the hell of it. Retired lighthouse keepers love to sound like ghosts. He just stared at me. Didn't laugh. Just said, if you hit the 8th step, don't look down. That should have been my first sign to get the hell out of there. But I didn't. I wanted the money. And besides, I don't believe in ghost stories. Not then. Not yet. The lighthouse was ancient. Built in the 1800s, stone and steel, perched on a cliff that looked like it could collapse into the sea any second. The ocean slammed into the rocks below like it hated the land. The keeper's house was a one-room shack, and everything smelled like mildew and salt and thyme. There was no Wi-Fi, no cell service, just a radio, a cot, a stove, a logbook, and the tower. It was beautiful in a bleak sort of way. Tall, spiral, coiled with a staircase that snaked up into shadow. The light hadn't worked in years. The Coast Guard paid me just to watch it, to keep an eye out, to write down ship movements, to check the stairs for damage. That first night, I climbed the tower. There were 7 steps between each landing. I counted them without thinking. 7, then another 7, then another. The last spiral leads to the lantern room. Windows in all directions. You could see nothing but black ocean and sky for miles. But that night, I saw something else. A shape in the water. It was far off, miles out. No boat. No lights. Just a figure. Long, pale. Floating upright. Watching. It vanished when I blinked. A week in, things started getting strange. The stairs creaked when no one was on them. Cold wind pushed up from below, even when the hatch to the lower levels was sealed. Once, I left the journal on the desk and came back to find a page torn out. In its place was a piece of driftwood carved with symbols I couldn't understand. Spirals. Eyes. I tried ignoring it. I'd go for long walks on the cliffs. Listen to the wind howl like voices in a bottle. Sometimes I'd wake up and find seaweed on the floor, wet footprints leading from the front door to the base of the tower. I don't sleep much anymore. Then came the dream. Or not a dream. A memory someone else gave me. In it, I was in the tower, climbing. But the stairs didn't end. The spiral kept going, tighter and tighter, and I couldn't breathe. My legs screamed, but I couldn't stop. Something behind me was following. Not quickly, not running, just pacing me. And as I climbed, I counted. 7, 14, 21, then 8. Just one step, one offbeat stair, thicker than the others, rougher, out of place. And when I stepped on it, everything changed. The tower was upside down. The walls were breathing. There was no lantern room anymore, just a hole. A vast black pit where the light should have been. And I heard a voice whisper from below. Now you see me. I woke up screaming, hands shaking, legs sore. And the worst part, I remembered taking that step. I went to the tower to prove it was just a dream. 7 stairs to the first landing. 7 to the next. 7 again. Then, there it was. The 8th step. Thicker, rougher, covered in small notches like teeth. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't step on it. Not then. That night, the radio turned on by itself. Just static at first. Then a voice. My voice. Whispering, come down. Come down. Come down. I didn't sleep. I sat with my back against the door, axe in hand, staring at the stairs. Waiting. In the early morning, I heard footsteps climbing. Not heavy. Wet. They stopped on the 8th step. And stayed there. For hours. I broke on the 14th day. Went up to the lantern room to breathe. To think. But when I got there, the windows were fogged from the inside. Something had drawn on them. A spiral. An eye. A word. Below. I ran. Out of the lighthouse. Onto the cliffs. I don't know what I was thinking. I just ran until the ocean was screaming at my feet, and I dropped to my knees. The rocks were covered in carvings. All the same symbols. As far as the tide would let me see. And then, I saw the figure again. Closer this time. Rising from the water like it belonged there. Long, pale. Wet skin hanging like seaweed. Its face was wrong. A human face, but stretched. Like it was borrowed. It opened its mouth and let out a sound like rushing water. Behind it, others rose. Dozens. Hundreds. All watching. All waiting. I fled back to the shack and locked every door. That was 3 days ago. I haven't gone back in the lighthouse, but the steps creak at night, and I can hear them counting. Not aloud. In my head. 6, 7, 8. And when I look out at the ocean, it's not empty anymore. They're closer now, and the tower whispers to me in my sleep. Just one more step.